And joining me now are Johnny Baab and Trey Nation of Ghost Hounds. Good afternoon to you, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, man.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, there's a lot of ground that you can cover, and there's always a lot of stuff I want to ask musicians. But I think it's probably, if you're going to do a lot of interviews, this is probably going to be question number one more than once. Explain Ghost Hounds. Where does that come from? And was that the first name you guys had, or was there a lot of consideration of other names, and then you're like, no, Ghost Hound is the perfect name? Whichever one of you wants to answer that question, I leave it to the floor.
Johnny Baab.
Go ahead.
Well, so I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the story of the man who went down to the crossroads and sold his soul to the devil.
Sure, there's a lot of great songs about that.
Yeah, so mainly we are inspired by Rob Johnson.
Yeah.
And the story of the hellhounds that come to collect your soul when you are paying up on that debt. He sings about his the hellhounds nipping at his heels, and so we took a beat from that, and that's why we're Ghost Hounds.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where it's a cool sounding name, so it almost doesn't matter. And that could have been the answer, by the way. You could have been like, I don't know, we just thought it sounded cool, and you would have been right. But yeah, I think
Sweet, thank you, man. We appreciate the compliment.
Does that kind of fit into the to the roots of the band? Is it common interests? And I'm hearing myself echo a little bit, and I think it's probably from Trey, but I'm not here.
Really?
When I'm talking, I might. No, you know what?
It's
I
me.
think it's Johnny.
Sorry, guys.
Because Trey, I think you might have earbuds in. So
Yes, sir.
So I'm sorry that I was quick to blame you.
It's okay,
But,
man.
so
Story of my life.
It's usually my fault.
No worries. So Johnny, I guess that would probably be a good way to say that if Robert Johnson inspires the name of the band, is that the sort of common ground that you and the rest of the band have, and sort of shared appreciation of music.
Will this mess it up now if I am unmuted?
As long as I don't talk.
Okay. So Ghost Hounds actually existed back in, was it 2008, somewhere in that range.
There.
And Thomas, our other guitar player, who's also the principal songwriter in this band, he was the one who was inspired to come up with that name. But yeah, it does definitely lend itself to the influences and the lineage of, influences in blues and rock and roll, because Robert Johnson, is often heralded as the first recorded artist, so I think that was like 1932 or somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And, recording music didn't really exist before then. I mean, it did, but not how we know it today. You know what I mean?
Right. It was like those sort of like tin can Victrola sort of sound that was with the big amplifier speaker against it. That no matter how loud you turned it, it still sounded like it was coming from across the street or whatever. I know what you're talking about, but so that sort of leads into my next question for Trey is so how long the band has been together. Now, the way that Johnny answered that, it seemed like the band was together at one point, and then maybe you guys went off and did other things, and now you've found your way back to each other. Is that accurate?
No, actually, this is the second iteration of this band.
I see.
And we share close ties with the original band, and they had a bit to do with our origin. But yeah, two separate bands. And we've been at this for a few years, maybe about 5. And yeah, we've grown a beautiful little family here.
Right. So, and what you were saying earlier, Johnny, was that Thomas, and I assume, obviously, you're speaking of Thomas Tull, who plays guitars. He was sort of in the earlier version, and then now he's keeping it going with this. Now, I know that that this album that'll be out later this year, and we'll talk about the song "Dirty Angel" that comes from it. It'll be released on Gibson Records, and that's a name that I think even people like myself, who are just spectators and enjoy music, but have never had much of an alacrity for playing or making it. Obviously, we all know Gibson guitars. So, Johnny, take a moment and talk about how that came about, working with Gibson in terms of having them release your album.
Well, I'm holding one right now. So, as a guitar player, it's obviously a tremendous honor to be involved with Gibson, and they've been, you know, Les Paul was at the forefront of electric guitars. So, they've changed the landscape of guitar-based music, and we're just so glad to be a part of such a legacy.
Yeah.
It's really like a true honor for me. I remember going to the guitar store as a kid. It's funny. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I used to run from my grade school down Court Street in Brooklyn, and I'd run about 15 blocks to get to the music store, and I'd go there and I'd look, and I'd stare up at the Gibsons, which were hung really high up because, they were nice guitars and they didn't want just anyone touching them. And, I, as a, 7-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, wasn't allowed to play them. So for me, it's like a total dream to be involved with the brand and with the record label. It's a pinch me moment for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be great to have that kind of endorsement. And Johnny, don't worry, I'll mute you when you're not talking. You don't have to go and do it every time. They've given me the power. I can just go ahead and push it there. But yeah, I can imagine having that brand behind you in any way. Obviously, creates good opportunities. And I was looking over some of the bands that you guys have toured with, and obviously there's some names really jumped out on there. And I wanted to ask you, Trey, what are there any of those that come to mind immediately?
I'm sorry, you're cutting out a bit, Christian.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just saying that I saw that you guys have opened for a lot of fairly impressive, well-known bands. Are there any of those moments where they were like pinch me moments for you that like, wow, I can't believe, we're sharing a bill with so-and-so?
Yeah, man, there's so many. I mean, we've been so fortunate to be given a chance by all these amazing legends, and it's all really kind of a pinch me moment. But there was one time in particular where we were doing a show in Berlin, and this event space was built by Hitler. Actually, it was a place where he would give his speeches, and so that was a part of this realism for me, is that I get to walk down the stage, in this place where someone like me would have never, been able to do before. And I remember they allowed me to go a little further out on the lip than I am usually allowed to go. And after the show, I was able to go into the pit and look up at Mick Jagger, and it was so close, and it was an outside venue, and it was just so captivating to my eye. But he was standing in a place where I remember like kneeling down and singing a song, and that was just amazing. It was an amazing feeling.
Right, you're like, I was just there.
I was just right there. Yeah,
Right,
my sweat's under his shoe right now. That's really cool.
That's very cool. Yeah, that was one of the ones
awesome.
I was going to mention, that obviously getting to play with the Stones. And I saw the Stones about a year and a half ago. I met up in Vegas with my dad. And
Nice.
Oddly enough, my dad had never seen them. I'd seen them a few times. And it's, it's just obviously at any time that I've ever seen them, they put on a great show. When you just think of how old Mick is and how he, like, I'm 47. When I was 27, I couldn't have moved that much.
Yeah,
I'd have a rocking chair on stage, and I'm like, I got to catch my breath, but not Mick. And
Nope.
that's got to be great to watch that. So some of the other bands, Johnny, that I know you guys toured with, or at least have played shows with, include ZZ Top, Garth Brooks. Bob Seger. Let me know about any of those that that might have kind of a moment that stands out. Any or all of them, especially I'd like to hear any story about ZZ Top. Did they give you beard grooming tips, or try to encourage you to go for the real full, down to your down to your belly button kind of beard?
No, no beard tips, but yeah, I mean, what I can say is that we've been treated extremely well by everyone we've opened up for, and specifically with ZZ Top, there was one moment we were sound checking, and I felt someone come up behind me and kind of touch my back, and I was assuming it was my guitar tech, like trying to fix something, like adjust my wireless pack or whatever. And I turned to the left, like just like this, and there was a huge beard right in my mouth. And it was Billy Gibbons, and he reached up behind me and he started over this side and started playing my guitar. And then we got to jam with him, and I sent a picture to my dad, and my dad was like, I think my dad was a little bit jealous, but like he introduced me to them, and these are all pinch me moments because that was their 50th anniversary tour, and
Sure.
it was when Dusty was still alive, and rest in peace, and also we got to the first Stone show we played was when Charlie was still alive, and rest in peace Charlie Watts, and these are irreplaceable moments. You can't put into words what it means to be a part of it. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, especially with these iconic bands that we're talking about. And then there is a little something extra when, like, being with ZZ Top, and Dusty was still with us. They had the same three guys for 50 years, and they only replaced him because he passed away. And I mean, I can remember watching Charlie Watts, and obviously, such a unique figure. And I assume that it must be great because even if these aren't bands that directly you feel like, oh, they're an influence, but just to having the guys from ZZ Top say hi, anything like that, Trey, that must be great, right?
Yeah, it's always amazing. Actually, it's pretty cool. I was performing in Beijing actually in like 2014, and my guitarist and the violin player in my band actually ran into Billy Gibbons, and they ended up going to some Chinese market together. So there's always just a few degrees of separation.
They're used to there used to be that game that people would try and do 6 degrees of
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon, but in the music business, it's probably 6 degrees of Billy Gibbons.
Yeah. Really.
There's always somebody who's been somewhere with him.
Yeah.
Well, before we started, the topic came up. Obviously, you guys have a great new song out called "Dirty Angel," and there's a video that goes with it. And from the inside scoop that I've gotten recently, my understanding is that it was pretty cold that day. Take a moment, Trey, to just talk about the song and filming the video that goes with it.
So Thomas, the other guitarist in our band, writes all the songs. And one of my favorite things about his songwriting is the man can tell a story. And he just fabricates these characters in his mind and builds lives around them. And it's a really cool thing to see. So with Dirty Angel, it's about a woman who is able to control when she unleashes her power on the world. And I think it's a very beautiful metaphor for a lot of beautiful things. And it's a great, and filming the video was awesome. As you said, it was really cold. We were in San Clarita, Santa Clarita.
Oh
And
yeah, okay. So in the Southern
weren't
California
expecting,
area,
yeah,
Santa Clarita, yeah.
weren't
So
expecting
okay.
it to be that cold, but it was awesome. The horses were beautiful, and the girl in the video, her name is Mia Ray. She's such an amazing athlete. If you could see some of the things that she was doing on these horses, and it was insane. It was beautiful.
talk a little bit about the same thing, Johnny, the sort of the filming the video, but then we'll talk about the song itself. Oh wait, now I'm the one who's supposed to turn him off. I forgot. I forgot. I bragged about the power that I had, and then I forgot. I'm so sorry that tech is not being our friend today. So, Johnny, that's my fault. That's not yours. It'll be no demerits from anyone at the record company. That is all on me. I asked Johnny a question, but the beauty will be when people get the audio version of this, they'll just hear this part. So, Johnny, I've got the same question for you. What about filming that video, and then we'll talk about the song.
I'm gonna try to connect.
Okay, but now the AirPods will go a long way. Yeah, absolutely. That's good. And if Apple wants to be a sponsor, I could use a new pair of AirPods actually. So that's all right. It's okay. That's on me for forgetting that I had muted you. It's completely on me. So yeah, let's just talk about filming the video and then the song itself and how it's probably a good representation for the band.
I was amazing. Talented.
Okay. Yeah, that Johnny, I'm gonna kick you out and you pop back in because whatever you tried to do with the AirPods, it turns you into a robot voice.
That was kind of cool. We should use that in the song.
Yeah, you can. That can be a big stick style concept record. So yeah, Johnny, just try to we'll just X out of this window and then pop back in. But I think that the song "Dirty Angel" Trey, it's got a great sound to it, and I mean, I think as with a lot of great music, it's hard to classify, it's rock song, has a country vibe, but there's some blues in there and it's a little bit of everything. And I'm like, that's probably exactly what you want. You don't want it to be like, yeah, this sounds like one thing, right?
Yeah, man. We pride ourselves on being bits of a chameleonizing ourselves in a way. Someone actually had a really cool way of putting it. They said that we have a potpourri of songs. So I like that a lot. We like to, give a lot of flavors in our dish.
What are some of the music that just, whether it's growing up, whether it's today, music that you like listening to that maybe doesn't directly influence what you play, but you're like, oh yeah, but I always loved, this style of music or this band that maybe people would be surprised that that was something that you listened to a lot?
Actually, Macy Gray, I think she's a musical genius. There's a band called Mute Math that is no longer together, but the originator of that is Paul Meany. He currently produces for 21 Pilots, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And just such a there's just so many people, man. We could do this all day. There's so many.
But it's interesting because I hadn't thought about Macy Gray in quite a
man.
while. But what a unique voice she has.
What a unique voice.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Like literally no one sounds like that except her.
Yeah,
and
man.
Yeah. Well, we've got Johnny back in.
Tech savvy Johnny over here.
But I don't hear myself echoing. So it was just a bad connection that we had before. Johnny, we were just sort of talking about some of the more interesting music that Trey has listened to that maybe doesn't directly influence, people wouldn't necessarily think, because he mentioned Macy Gray, and it's not like, oh yeah, well, you sing like Macy Gray, that makes sense. No, of course not. But what's some stuff that you listen to that maybe people wouldn't think of right away that maybe isn't represented in the sound of Ghost Hounds?
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, so I think what you can call the New York City sound is like kind of neo soul. So that kind of blends, R&B, jazz, blues, and I grew up listening to a lot of hip hop as well. In the '90s in Brooklyn, that was kind of the cool thing. So I used to love Eminem and Notorious B.I.G. But what I loved about them was that the music behind it was so musical. I mean, pardon me. I'm a, Jimi Hendrix head, Stevie Ray Vaughan, I'm heavily influenced by that. And there's obviously like a steep lineage in, um, where they got their influence from as well. But yeah, like the kind of like out of the pocket influence that you maybe wouldn't guess, like through Ghost Hounds music, is probably like Eminem or like TLC or Destiny's Child or Jay-Z, all those kinds of things.
All amazing songwriters with, just incredibly catchy songs, great hooks, great beats, all that stuff. That, yeah, I mean, I think you just sort of soak it all in. And yeah, when you grow up somewhere like New York, I mean, you're exposed to everything. It's funny to think about, people think of CBGBs as this, basically this punk rock club, and the bathroom was legendary for how unsanitary it was. But I'll say I was much more comfortable using the bathroom at CBGB's than the McDonald's on West 4th Street, just a few blocks away. That's just me.
Well, listen,
you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, somebody came into CBGB's with a hose once in a while. But the reason I mentioned CBGB's is that the name stood for Country Bluegrass Blues, which is not usually the music that people thought of. But if you were to look, at least like in the 90s when I went there before it closed, it was like kind of a little bit of everything. It wasn't just like alternative bands. It wasn't just hard rock bands. It wasn't metal. It was a little bit of everything. And I mean, I think that's I'm sure growing up in Brooklyn, you talked about running to the guitar store, but you could have walked past, kids listening to any different kind of music before you got to that guitar store. And it's hard to not be exposed to a little bit of everything. And even if it's not like consciously, like listening to Biggie really, influences songs that I've written musically, lyrically, anything. It's all in there somewhere, So, and if you soak up anybody who achieves that level of success, you're learning from one of the greats, maybe not directly, but
I think a big part, it makes total sense. And I think a big part of like listening to hip hop in the 90s was that they were using samples from the 70s, or the 80s. And a lot of that music was very steeped in, kind of soul music. And then in terms of, the CBGBs and the McDonald's bathroom, I think people smoked a lot of things in there. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. Yeah. You can learn about the world in that McDonald's, which I believe is still there. My brother lives at the corner of Bleecker and Broadway, so he's lived there for like 25 years. So I still get down to that neck of the woods every once in a while, and but that CBGB's is like a Chase Bank now. It was like
the John Harvados for a while.
Oh yeah, but there's a Chase next to it. You're right. It is yeah. You're right. But there is a Chase Bank like right next to it. And I'm just like, all right, I guess that's the ultimate sign of the times, though. That in the spot next,
everything's a Chase Bank now in New York.
Well, I'm going to ask you both kind of the same question. But since we're sort of on this, what is the first time, Johnny, where you went to, as opposed to just hearing somebody playing music or a friend putting it on, where you went somewhere specifically to see live music? Do you remember the first band you went to see, or maybe somebody brought you to see, or maybe, especially somewhere like New York, maybe somebody was just playing outside and you heard them in a park or something?
Oh yeah. So my mother and my father are both musical, and I kind of grew up in the blues clubs in New York City. So I think it was 1994, which would have made me about 5 years old. And I was at this club on, I think it was 9th Ave and 18th Street. I think that's about where it was. It was called Chicago Blues. And my dad brought me and my sister to see Bo Diddley play when he was still alive. Obviously another one that we've lost, rest in peace. But I fell asleep, and I was so small that the back of my neck was about even with the top of the chair. So when I fell asleep, I was open mouth snoring kind of thing, and Bo Diddley stopped the show, and I woke up in the middle of it. and he was saying how he must be too old because he's putting the kids to sleep. And that was my first like impactful memory of like a live music experience. And I got to see him years later at maybe in 2000 at BB King's, and my dad talked to him and told him, hey, this is the kid that fell asleep all those years ago. And so it was kind of embarrassing for me, but it was a cool moment. Other than that, my first real big concert was at Roseland Ballroom. I think I was 8 years old. It was Halloween, and it was an Alice Cooper concert. And I was terrified. It was crazy, man.
Two things about that. One, I was at that show that Halloween. I think it was like 2001, maybe 2002. I forget exactly, but I was at that show. It was great. My first show, you're talking about being 5 or 6 in 1994. I graduated high school in 1994, so we've established that I'm older. But the first concert I went to was also Alice Cooper. It was in 1990 at the Ritz, which is not the original Ritz, but it's the Ritz that had been Studio 54. It's that location. And I was like 14, and you needed to be 16 to go to the club. But I always give it today that we're talking, it's my mom's birthday. So I figure it's the ultimate tribute to give credit to my mom for making me a fake ID. It was a fake school ID with my birthday on it, but they just it was not convincing, but they just looked at it and it was like, if she wants to bring a kid who's under 16 to see Alice Cooper, what do I care? Let's just get in, as long as nobody's holding a knife or a bag of weed or something. It's fine, back in those days. But so yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it sort of then that summer I also saw Kiss and Aerosmith, and so there was like a very high bar from bands what I expected from bands. But yeah, seeing Alice Cooper as a kid, I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. When I was a kid, Kiss were still in the makeup, before they put it back on, before they took it off and then put it back on. And they were on a show on PBS called 3-2-1 Contact. And it was supposed to be about like stage lighting and all this stuff. And I was like 4, and I was terrified of really Gene Simmons in particular. Like I remember being that scared. So that took a little while. It was almost like they needed to have the makeup on for me to consider actually listening to them. But being so little and going to an Alice Cooper show where, he at the very least had his head cut off. I'm sure there was stage play, there was fake blood. What did that do to you? Did you have a lot to process after that, Johnny?
Yeah, I guess so. One thing I do remember, which is really funny, is this is when they still allowed glass bottles. And also, since it was Halloween, my dad painted our faces. So we were, constantly like, people coming up to us like, yeah. And we were just like, oh my God. But I remember watching glass bottle tomahawk through the air and just smack this woman in the face, break her nose, blood everywhere, her screaming. And no one really flinched. And me and my sister were just like, oh my God. Like we were, like I said, terrified. But it was also like, what a great first concert because, first of all, the music was killing. The show was stupendous. It was so great. And also, that kind of experience where you see people, maybe enjoying themselves in a different way, but coming so much outside of themselves, so much outside of how they act in their normal lives and going there on Halloween and just letting it all out. It was just kind of a confirmation for me that, music really does things to people. I don't want to say that I ever want anyone to throw a glass bottle on someone else's face. That I do not want that at all. But, it just kind of shows you like it kind of makes people let loose and kind of forget about their, whatever's going on in their life, their hang-ups, and, it has an effect. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one thing to, have Alice's fake head being held and pretend blood oozing out of it, but actual blood from, it's crazy. I hadn't thought about that in years about like they used to give people glass bottles and, obviously that was a problem. My enduring memory from Roseland is I saw Rancid there in like 95 and I lost my shoes because I was not prepared for the surge of the crowd. I lost one shoe, and 2 seconds later, I lost the other one. So that was a fun walk back to the Port Authority bus terminal. But Trey, similar question for you. Just sort of, seeing music being performed. It doesn't even have to be the very first time, but what is a time sort of early in life that really stood out for you of getting it could even be the moment where you're like, oh yeah, I definitely want to do this.
Well, I grew up singing in church, so other than that, my first concert was Britney Spears in 2000, and that actually
Nice.
was the moment that I decided that I wanted to. I was like, I want to do that. That looks like fun. Yeah, that's when she was still singing and dancing. It was a good time.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's like the sweet spot, I think, to
Hmm.
have seen Britney, It's
Yep.
there's there's probably something to be said for seeing sort of the Vegas residency lounge Britney, you're gonna get to hear the songs. But yeah, to have is
Saw her in her
had a
prime,
show like that, yeah, it's like
strong.
yeah, it's
Nothing
like
like seeing 16-year-old Britney though.
yeah, right, exactly. And I mean, it's it's more fun to have those memories than, follow her on Instagram. So definitely. And yeah, but that sort of just goes back to what we were saying earlier is like, good music is good music and a good show is a good
It was a good
show,
show. Hmm.
and yeah, and to what Johnny was saying, just sort of the way that people respond when music is, it's like there last year there were multiple documentaries on Woodstock 99, which obviously didn't go well from a lot of different vantage points. But some of the concert footage, I think it's like during Limp Bizkit or Korn, everybody's jumping at the same time, and you're like, it's like 50,000 people all jumping. I mean, look what's happening to them, and obviously those documentaries highlight that it's not always a good thing when 50,000 people have that much energy and not a place to burn it off. But, when you sort of think about just that reaction that music can have that. And I've never been in a crowd that big, but, anything that I have been in, it's like it's great when everybody's there kind of for the same thing, I went with friends to see the Grateful Dead a couple times when I was in college. It was never my favorite thing, but it was like everybody was kind of in it together, and I probably just didn't have the right acid. That's probably what it really came down to. But but it was like it was very cool, and when everybody's there. I think there's something to be said about that. And look, I've been at club shows here in LA at the Whiskey A Go Go, where it's also like, what is it, like maybe 300 people in there, but you can still feel it because you're all kind of on top of each other. Also, much cleaner bathroom at the Whiskey than either CBGB's or the McDonald's, just to keep the bathroom theme going through the whole thing. Here in the live chat, Dominicus Saxon says, music is so subjective. When it touches you, its effects never really leave you. It's very
Agreed.
insightful from Dominicus Saxon, and I very much agree. So, on the topic of live shows, tell us what might be in the works for Ghost Hounds later this year. Anything you've got coming up? I'll ask you first, Trey.
I have no idea actually. We did just get signed to Gibson Guitar,
Great.
so we'll probably have a few things lined up. But yeah, when we let you know, we'll keep you abreast.
Please let me know. And where is the place to go, Johnny, for all information, all things Ghost Hounds? The video we're talking about for Dirty Angel is on the Ghost Hounds YouTube page. But beyond that, if they want to keep an eye out for any upcoming live shows or tour dates or anything, where's the best place to go, Johnny?
Yeah, so I mean, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. Facebook is just Ghost Hounds. Instagram is at Ghost Hounds Band. Also, May 4th, we're releasing our next single through Gibson Records, which is Make It Shake. So, and then we're going to release the rest of the record this summer. Aside from that, we are just just gonna start there and keep you guys posted as much as we can. But those are probably the best channels, to follow us on, our Facebook and Instagram.
Right. Yeah. And according to what I was given, the album will come out in June, but sometime this summer. And the idea that Gibson's getting involved. I know last year they put out a great Slash with Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators album that's called Four. We're kind of in this era where bands have decided that they're just going to go ahead and put the number of the album. There's like 4 albums coming out this year that are, 6 or 7. I like that the band Chicago, for years they were like Chicago 17, Chicago 18, Chicago 19. And at some point they stopped and it was like, I mean, you just should have just kept going at that point, why?
Also,
it's like, it's
Led Zeppelin.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, I know. And it's like, then they stopped. It was like, I guess they did it early, with the first 3 and the one that most of us call Led Zeppelin 4. It's because what are we going to call it? Those symbols. So, yeah, but it's a great point. And so that's something to keep in mind for, your next record would be your 3rd, right? So then unless I'm mistaken, so then it could be 3.
It's actually going to be
5th?
Our 4th, but technically
Okay.
5th because we released a live record. So,
right.
But we'll call it 4.
So then it's like 4.5, and it already gets confusing. So you know what? Stick with titles. I think that'll be good. Yeah. As we wrap this up, when we touched base, when we were getting started to talk in the interview, I guess you guys are both in Pittsburgh. So how does that come to be? Is all the band there, or just you guys happen to be there right now? You really like Primanti Brothers sandwiches, so you took a road trip, or how is it that you guys are in Pittsburgh right now?
Well, I mean, we meet here in Pittsburgh, and I can speak for myself personally. I think we all have our different reasons for where we have landed, but it's where the band calls home, and we have a community of people that really love us and treat us really nice, and so that makes it easy. But yeah, that's a good answer for me.
Yeah,
But
no, I just wasn't, it's, is there a decent music scene there? I mean, is it, it's not too far from a few major cities. So, I think a lot of bands would probably play there, I assume. But in terms of, just meeting other musicians and stuff, you feel like there's a decent scene there, Trey?
yes, definitely. Pittsburgh is music. There's so many musicians running around here. It's that's what makes it easy, to build a community of people that, feel good to be around because we all love the same thing. And whether they play music or they just listen to music, Pittsburgh's definitely a music city.
Yeah, I mean, look, my knowledge of that goes back to early childhood when Mr. Rogers had on like jazz musicians and they would do operas and stuff like that. So, you kind of have we're going back 40 plus years, but, Johnny, is it a nice change of pace to end up in Pittsburgh from Brooklyn? It's a little bit more laid back, I'd say. The weather's about the same. It's not like you move to Buffalo or something, right?
Yeah, I mean the weather's pretty cool. One thing I will say is that Pittsburgh has it's very steeped in a rich history of jazz, and that has kind of infiltrated itself into the music that's going on now. So just give a shout out, our keyboard and organ player Joe Monroe. He's in the Beaver County Hall of Fame of Music.
That's right.
He's a wonderful musician. Bennett Miller, who plays bass for us, he actually is from Cincinnati, and he went to the New England Conservatory of Music, got a master's degree. Blaze Lanzetta, our drummer, he went to Berklee College of Music. So it's wonderful to be accepted here as musicians in such a rich history of really high quality music, and we're all very grateful for that. For me, I'm from the school of the hard knocks. I just listen to records and try to imitate them like a parrot. So, I don't have a degree in music, but, I just play what I feel. And, like I said, to be accepted in this community is really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, you talked obviously earlier about Jimi Hendrix, and it's very easy to point to one of the greats like that. But you talking about just listening to music and trying to imitate it, it's hard to not think about Hendrix. I think it was the Monterey Pop Festival where he played. I think he opened with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and the album had come out like 2 days before. It like had just come out, and he's like, well, this is what I'm working on. And it's got to be kind of cool to to think like, yeah, I can sit down and try and figure out what this is. So, and obviously the support of Gibson as a record company goes a long way. And you mentioned all the ways to find Ghost Hounds. Johnny Baab, Trey Nation, it was great talking to both of you. Hopefully that calendar of upcoming live gigs fills out. And if you guys are in Southern California at any point this year, I'd love to get a chance to check you out. But thank you both for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, man.
Christian. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. And for our audio audience, give a listen right now to Dirty Angel. However, the video audience, just watch us stare awkwardly while I shut this off and we wait for the broadcast to end. But thanks to everybody in the live chat and beyond.